My father, Richard Bennett, spent 37 years as Senior VP of Operations at Meridian Industrial Solutions. He made $340,000 annually, drove a leased Mercedes S-Class, and belonged to the West Shore Country Club where membership cost $85,000 initiation plus $12,000 yearly dues. He built his identity on corporate hierarchy, executive status, and the carefully curated image of success. I'm Marcus Bennett. I'm 32 years old. For the past decade, my father introduced me at family gatherings the same way. This is Marcus. He does government work. Data entry, I think. He wasn't entirely wrong. I did work for the government, just not the way he imagined. The disappointment started early. I graduated from MIT with a degree in aerospace engineering and cryptographic systems. Dad attended my graduation but left before the reception when he learned I'd accepted a position with a minor government contractor, instead of Boeing or Lockheed Martin's corporate headquarters. Government work, he said with visible distaste. Marcus, I raised you for executive leadership, not middle management bureaucracy. It's interesting work, Dad. Interesting doesn't build legacy. Where's the corner office? Where's the executive parking spot? He shook his head. Your cousin James just made partner at his law firm. Your sister Victoria runs an entire marketing division. And you're filing paperwork for mid-level government contracts. I didn't correct him. My actual role was lead systems architect for classified aerospace defense contracts. My security clearance was TS/SCI with additional compartmented access. The minor government contractor was actually my own company, Archon Systems Integration, which I'd founded at 24 with 2 MIT classmates. We started small. A $2.8 million contract for navigation system integration. Then $8.3 million for communications encryption. By year 3, we'd secured a $47 million multi-year contract for satellite defense systems. By year 7, our annual government contracts totaled $186 million, and we'd expanded into aerospace consulting for 3 Fortune 100 companies. Last year, Archon's total valuation hit $340 million. I owned 73% of the company outright. But Dad never asked about my work. He asked about my title, my office size, whether I had people reporting to me. When I mentioned I had a team, he assumed I meant a small group of fellow data entry clerks. At family gatherings, the contrast was constant and deliberate. Victoria's division generated $15 million in new business this quarter. Dad announced at Christmas dinner 2 years ago. She's being considered for VP of Marketing. And James just closed a merger worth $40 million. His firm is making him equity partner. Mom beamed. We're so proud. Dad turned to me. Marcus, how's the government job? Busy. Good projects. Still doing data entry? Something like that. Well. He sighed like I was a disappointment he'd learned to tolerate. Steady work is respectable, I suppose. Not everyone can handle executive pressure. Victoria smirked into her wine glass. James, my cousin, just nodded sympathetically like I was someone to be pitied. The turning point came 6 months ago. Dad announced his retirement at Sunday brunch. 37 years, he declared. I'm retiring as Senior VP with full executive benefits and pension. Meridian is throwing a retirement celebration at West Shore Country Club. Black tie executive reception. The CEO is speaking. Board members attending. The chairman of our parent company is flying in from New York. That's wonderful, Dad, Victoria said. Such an accomplishment. It is. Dad looked directly at me. Marcus, I need to discuss your attendance. I set down my coffee. Okay. This is a professional executive event. C-suite executives, board members, industry leaders. The invitation says, Black tie executive reception. There's a difference between professional achievement and showing up. Mom touched his arm. Richard. I'm being honest, Patricia. Marcus works in data entry for a government contractor. He'll be surrounded by people asking what he does, where he works, what his title is. It's not his environment. Dad, I can wear a tuxedo and make small talk. It's not about the tuxedo. His voice had that edge of corporate authority. It's about context. You'd be the only person there without an executive position or significant business achievement. It would be uncomfortable for you and potentially embarrassing for me. Some of my colleagues know I have a son. They'll expect more. The table went quiet. You're uninviting me from your retirement party. I'm suggesting your attendance would lower the standard of the event. These are people I've worked with for decades. I don't want to spend my retirement celebration explaining why my son does data entry. Victoria looked at her plate. James studied his napkin. Mom's face was tight. I understand, I said calmly. Good. Dad looked relieved. This is business, Marcus. Nothing personal. When you reach a certain professional level, these things matter. I nodded. I won't attend. Thank you. I appreciate your understanding. What Dad didn't know was that I'd already received my own invitation to his retirement party. Not from him. From the West Shore Country Club's ownership group. Because 3 years earlier I'd purchased the West Shore Country Club. Not as Marcus Bennett, private citizen. Through Archon Holdings, one of my company's investment subsidiaries. The club had been struggling financially, facing $4.8 million in debt and declining membership. The previous owners needed an exit strategy. My investment firm bought it for $8.2 million, restructured the debt, upgraded the facilities, and turned it into a profitable asset. We kept the original management, maintained membership standards, and nobody knew the ownership had changed except the board, the management, and the legal team. My father had been paying his $12,000 annual dues to my company for 3 years. He'd been dining at my restaurant, playing golf on my course, and networking in my lounges while calling me a disappointment. The irony was something I'd chosen to keep private. He'll know. The day after Dad uninvited me, I called my head of security at West Shore. James, I said, I need to discuss the Bennett retirement reception. Sir. Evening of the 24th. We've got the Platinum Lounge reserved, full catering, valet service. Your father's company booked it 8 weeks ago. I'm aware. I need you to personally handle entrance management that evening. Of course. Any specific concerns? Richard Bennett is the guest of honor. He'll be arriving around 6:30 p.m. When he tries to enter the Platinum Lounge, I need you to stop him. There was a pause. Sir. The Platinum Lounge is owner-reserved space. My father doesn't know I own the club. He's about to learn. When he arrives, inform him that the Platinum section requires owner authorization for entry. Don't let him through until he asks the right questions. James was quiet for 3 seconds. Understood, sir. And when he asks who the owner is, tell him the owner is already inside. Then call me. I'll handle the rest. Yes, sir. I hung up and opened my email. The invitation Dad had sent was still there. Black tie executive reception. Regrets only. I replied with one word, okay. Then I called my executive assistant at Archon. Michelle, I need you to prepare a portfolio. What kind? Everything. Company valuation, government contracts, facility clearances, client list. The unclassified portions. Include the West Shore Country Club acquisition documents, financial statements for the past 3 years, and my personal net worth summary. Print it in a leather binder. I need it by the 24th. The day of your father's retirement party. Exactly. The evening of April 24th was clear and cool. I arrived at West Shore at 6 p.m., 30 minutes before the official reception start time. I wore a custom Tom Ford tuxedo Patek Philippe watch, and carried the leather portfolio Michelle had prepared. James met me at the private owner's entrance. Good evening, Mr. Bennett. Evening, James. Is everything ready? Sir. The Platinum Lounge is fully set up. Catering is in place. Your father's party is expected at 6:30. I'll be stationed at the main entrance to the Platinum section. Perfect. I'll be inside. When my father arrives, follow the plan exactly. Understood, sir. I entered the Platinum Lounge through the private corridor. The space was impeccable. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the golf course, crystal chandeliers, private bar, seating for 80 guests. My company had spent $340,000 renovating this room alone. I took a seat at a corner table with a clear view of the main entrance. I ordered a scotch and opened the portfolio, reviewing the documents I might need. At 6:32 p.m., I heard raised voices from the entrance corridor. Sir, I need to see your authorization. Authorization? I'm the guest of honor. This is my retirement party. That was Dad's voice, already frustrated. I set down my scotch and waited. I understand, sir, but the Platinum Lounge is reserved exclusively for the owner's guests this evening. I need confirmation that you're authorized to enter this section. Authorized? My company booked this room 8 weeks ago. We paid $18,000 for this space. The booking is confirmed, sir. However, the Platinum section has specific access requirements. Club ownership has reserved this area for tonight. I need to verify your authorization. This is absurd. Dad's voice was getting louder. I've been a member of this club for 15 years. Do you know who I am? Yes, Mr. Bennett. You're tonight's honoree. However, club policy requires. Get your manager. Get the club president. This is outrageous. James remained calm. Sir, I'm following owner instructions directly. The owner of West Shore Country Club has reserved this section. If you'd like entry, I need to confirm you're on the authorized guest list. There was a dangerous pause. Who owns this club? The ownership information is private, sir. However, the owner is currently inside the Platinum Lounge. Would you like me to inquire about your authorization? Yes. Immediately. I heard James speak quietly into his radio. Security to owner. Mr. Richard Bennett is at the Platinum entrance requesting authorization. I stood, straightened my jacket and walked toward the entrance. The portfolio remained on my table. I wouldn't need it yet. The corridor opened into the entrance foyer. Dad stood facing James, red-faced and furious. He was wearing a tuxedo, looking every inch the successful executive. Mom stood behind him, looking uncomfortable. Victoria and her husband were there, along with about 20 other guests, all dressed formally, all looking confused and irritated. Dad was mid-sentence when he saw me. And I want to speak to whoever owns this club right now because this is the most unprofessional. He stopped. His face went through 3 expressions: confusion, recognition, and dismissal. Marcus, what are you doing here? I told you not to attend. I smiled politely. Hello, Dad. Victoria. You weren't invited, Dad said sharply. This is an executive event. I'm aware. Then why are you here? And why are you inside the Platinum Lounge? He turned to James. This is my son. He's not authorized to be here either. He works in government data entry. James looked at me. I gave him a small nod. Mr. Bennett, James said carefully. This is Marcus Bennett. He owns West Shore Country Club. The corridor went completely silent. Dad stared at James. What? Marcus Bennett is the owner of this facility. He purchased it 3 years ago through Archon Holdings. He's authorized to be anywhere on the property. In fact, he authorized tonight's event. Dad's face went pale. That's impossible. I can provide documentation if needed, sir. Dad turned to me slowly. You own this club? Yes. You own West Shore Country Club. Through one of my investment companies, yes. We acquired it 3 years ago when the previous owners faced financial difficulties. We've invested about $3.2 million in renovations and improvements since then. Your investment company? Archon Holdings. It's a subsidiary of Archon Systems Integration. That's my primary company. Mom's hand went to her mouth. Victoria's face had gone white. Dad's voice was very quiet. Your government data entry job. I don't do data entry, Dad. I'm the founder and CEO of Archon Systems Integration. We're a defense aerospace contractor specializing in classified satellite and communications systems. We hold $186 million in active government contracts. Last year our company valuation was $340 million. I own 73% of it. The number hit him like a physical blow. You're saying you're worth. Personally, about $248 million, not including real estate holdings and other investments. Including this club, which we purchased for $8.2 million and is now valued at approximately $11.7 million. Dad grabbed the wall for support. You've been paying your membership dues to my company for 3 years, I continued calmly. The $12,000 annual fee the restaurant charges, the golf course fees. All of it. You've been dining at my restaurant, playing on my golf course and networking in my facilities while telling everyone I do data entry. I didn't know. You never asked, Dad. You asked about my title, my office size, whether I had a corner window. You never asked what I actually do. You assumed. And when your assumption made me seem disappointing, you stopped asking altogether. Victoria found her voice. Marcus, we had no idea. Of course you didn't. Because none of you wanted to know. Dad introduced me as government data entry for 10 years. At family dinners, at Christmas, at every gathering, I was the disappointment. The one who didn't meet the executive standard. Dad was shaking his head. But you never corrected me. You never said. I said I had interesting work. I said my team was growing. I said we had good projects. You heard what you wanted to hear. Why didn't you just tell me? I looked at him for a long moment. Because I wanted to see if you'd ask. If you'd show interest in my life beyond measuring it against your corporate hierarchy. You never did. For 10 years you never once asked about my actual work. You just assumed I'd failed to meet your standards. Mom was crying now. Marcus, we're so sorry. And 3 days ago, I continued, you uninvited me from your retirement party because my attendance would lower the standard and embarrass you in front of your executive colleagues. You were worried someone might ask what I do and you'd have to explain your disappointing son. Dad's voice was barely a whisper. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. I turned to James. Please escort Mr. Bennett and his guests into the Platinum Lounge. They're authorized for tonight's event. It's his retirement party. He should enjoy it. Yes, sir. I started walking back toward the lounge. Marcus, wait. I stopped but didn't turn around. Your retirement celebration starts in 15 minutes, Dad. The CEO of your company is about to arrive. The board chairman is flying in from New York. You worked 37 years for this moment. Don't waste it. But I need to apologize. You need to celebrate your retirement. We'll talk later. Or not. Right now you have guests arriving. I walked back into the Platinum Lounge. Behind me, I heard James quietly directing Dad's guests inside. I returned to my corner table, picked up my scotch and waited. The next hour was fascinating. Dad's colleagues arrived. The CEO of Meridian Industrial Solutions, the board members, the chairman from New York. They entered the Platinum Lounge and within 10 minutes, 3 of them had approached my table. Marcus Bennett? Tom Hargrove, CEO of Meridian. He extended his hand. I didn't realize you'd be here tonight. I shook his hand. Richard Bennett is my father. It's his retirement party. Of course, but I meant, your company does exceptional work. We've been trying to get a meeting with Archon Systems for 6 months. Our aerospace division has a project that could benefit from your cryptographic expertise. We can arrange a meeting. Have your people contact my office. He nodded enthusiastically. Absolutely. And I have to say, this facility is remarkable. The renovations you've done are extraordinary. Best private club in the state. Thank you. He glanced toward where Dad stood, pale and shaken, surrounded by well-wishers who didn't yet understand what had happened. Richard never mentioned his son owned the club. I don't think he knew. Tom Hargrove's eyebrows rose. He didn't know his own son owned a $340 million aerospace company? We don't talk much about work. That's unfortunate. He paused. Well, congratulations on your success. You've built something remarkable. 2 more executives approached within the next 20 minutes. Both knew my company. Both wanted meetings. Both seemed confused about why Dad had never mentioned me. I watched Dad across the room. He kept glancing at me, then away, then back. His retirement speech was scheduled for 8 p.m. He looked like a man whose entire worldview had just collapsed. At 7:45, Mom approached my table alone. Marcus, may I sit? Of course. She sat carefully, her hands folded in her lap. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, Mom. Yes, I do. Her voice cracked. We failed you. Your father and I both. We were so focused on what we thought success looked like that we couldn't see what you were actually building. You saw what Dad wanted to see. That's not an excuse. She wiped her eyes. You built an extraordinary company. You've achieved more than any of us imagined. And we made you feel small because it didn't fit our narrow definition of success. I never needed you to understand my work, Mom. I needed you to trust that I knew what I was doing. We should have trusted you. Yes. She was quiet for a moment. Your father's speech is in 15 minutes. He's terrified. He doesn't know what to say. He should give the speech he prepared. This is his night. His retirement. He earned it. After what he said to you. He spent 37 years building his career. That matters. Tonight should celebrate that. We can deal with our relationship later. Mom squeezed my hand. You're a better man than we deserved. She stood and walked back to Dad. I saw them talk quietly. Dad looked at me again and this time I nodded. He needed to move forward with his evening. At 8 p.m. the CEO of Meridian called for attention. The room quieted. Dad walked to the small podium that had been set up near the windows. He looked out at the crowd of colleagues, executives and board members. Then he looked at me. 37 years ago, he began, I started at Meridian as a junior operations manager. I was 26 years old, hungry to prove myself, determined to climb the ladder. I believed success meant titles, corner offices, executive parking spots. I built my career on that foundation. He paused. Tonight, I'm retiring as Senior VP of Operations. I reached the executive level I dreamed about. I earned the titles I wanted. By every measure I set for myself, I succeeded. His voice changed. But tonight I also learned that I failed to recognize success when it was sitting in my own home. My son Marcus is in this room. He's the owner of this club. More importantly, he's the founder and CEO of a $340 million aerospace defense company. He built it from nothing while I told people he did data entry. The room was completely silent. For 10 years I measured his success by my standards. I looked for corner offices and executive titles. I never asked about the classified government contracts, the defense systems, the aerospace innovations he was creating. I saw what I wanted to see and what I saw disappointed me. Dad's hands gripped the podium. 3 days ago, I uninvited him from this party because I was embarrassed by what I thought he did. I told him his attendance would lower the standard of this event. Tonight I learned he owns the venue. He authorized this entire celebration. And every executive in this room seems to know his company and want to work with him. Someone in the crowd actually gasped. So before I talk about my 37 years at Meridian, I need to say this. Dad looked directly at me. Marcus, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for dismissing your achievements. I'm sorry for never asking about your work. I'm sorry for measuring you by standards that don't matter. You built something extraordinary and I was too blind to see it. The room was absolutely still. You were right, Dad continued quietly. I didn't want to know. Because knowing would have meant admitting I was wrong about what success looks like. It would have meant recognizing that you surpassed everything I achieved, and you did it quietly without the titles and recognition I craved. He paused. I don't know if you can forgive me, but I hope tonight on what should be my celebration, you understand that I finally see you. And I'm proud. Not of your money or your company or your success. I'm proud that despite having a father who couldn't see your worth, you built something meaningful anyway. Dad stepped back from the podium. The room erupted in applause, but he wasn't looking at them. He was looking at me. I stood and walked to the podium. The crowd quieted. Dad, I said, give your retirement speech. You earned this night. We'll talk tomorrow. But tonight is yours. He nodded slowly. I returned to my table. Dad gave his prepared speech. He talked about his career, his colleagues, his journey from junior manager to senior VP. It was a good speech, humble and grateful. When he finished, the crowd applauded enthusiastically. The party continued until 11 p.m. Executives approached Dad with congratulations. Several approached me with business cards and meeting requests. Victoria hugged me awkwardly and apologized 3 times. Mom cried again. At 10:45, as guests were leaving, Dad approached my table one last time. Can we have coffee tomorrow? Sure. At my house. I thought about it. No. Let's meet at the club. 9 a.m. We can talk in the owner's private dining room. He nodded. I'll be there. Dad. Yes. You didn't fail. You built a successful career. You raised 3 kids. You provided for your family. That matters. We just need to redefine what success means to both of us. His eyes filled. Thank you. He left with Mom. Victoria and her husband followed. The remaining guests filtered out. By 11:15 I was alone in the Platinum Lounge. James appeared. Quite an evening, sir. Yes. Will Mr. Bennett be returning? Tomorrow morning. We're having coffee. I'll have the private dining room prepared. Thank you, James. I walked through the empty lounge, past the tables that had held Dad's retirement celebration, out to the private corridor. My car was waiting. I drove home to my house in Brookfield Heights, a $2.8 million property I'd purchased with my first major contract payout. The next morning I arrived at West Shore at 8:50 a.m. James had the private dining room set up with coffee, pastries, and a quiet space for conversation. Dad arrived at exactly 9 a.m. He looked tired but steady. We sat. I poured coffee. I brought something, Dad said. He pulled out a folder. This is every family photo I have of you. Christmas, graduations, birthdays. 32 years of photos. He spread them on the table. Last night I went through them all. You know what I realized? In almost every picture you're smiling. You look happy. Confident. Like you knew exactly who you were and where you were going. I never saw it. I was so focused on what I thought you should be that I never saw who you actually were. Dad. Let me finish. He took a breath. I built my entire identity on corporate hierarchy. When you didn't follow that path, I thought you'd failed. But you didn't fail. You just succeeded differently. You built something bigger than anything I ever imagined, and you did it while I was calling you a disappointment. You weren't entirely wrong, I said. I could have told you about my company years ago. I chose not to. Partly because you weren't asking, but partly because I wanted to see if you'd value me without the success markers you cared about. That's fair. But Dad, you need to understand something. Your career wasn't less valuable because mine turned out differently. You worked 37 years at a company. You provided for your family. You earned your retirement. That matters. But I hurt you. Yes. And I don't know how to fix that. I was quiet for a moment. You start by asking about my work. Really asking. Not about titles or office size. About what I actually do, why it matters, what challenges I'm solving. Okay. And you stop measuring success by corporate hierarchy. Victoria's marketing success is valuable. Your career was valuable. My company is valuable. They're just different paths. Dad nodded slowly. Can I ask now? About your work. Yes. What do you actually do? I smiled. I design cryptographic systems for classified defense satellites. My team of 47 engineers builds secure communication networks that protect national security infrastructure. We integrate aerospace systems that coordinate defense operations across multiple agencies. That sounds incredible. It is. It's complex, challenging work. I love it. Why didn't you tell me? Most of it's classified. I can't discuss specifics. But also, you never asked about the work itself. You asked about titles and hierarchy. There was no entry point for the actual conversation. Dad was quiet. I wasted 10 years. We both did. But we don't have to waste the next 10. He looked up. No. If you actually want to know about my work, my company, my life, I'll tell you. But it has to be genuine. Not because you're impressed by the money or the success. Because you actually care about who I am. I do care. Always cared. I just showed it terribly. Then we start over. Today. Dad reached across the table. I shook his hand. Marcus, what you've built is extraordinary. Not just the company or the money. The way you handled last night. The way you're handling this conversation. You're a better man than I taught you to be. You taught me plenty, Dad. Work ethic, integrity, commitment. I just applied it differently. We talked for 2 more hours. I showed him the portfolio Michelle had prepared. The unclassified portions of my company, the contracts I could discuss, the growth trajectory we were on. He asked real questions. Some he didn't understand, but he tried. At noon we walked out together. In the parking lot he looked at the club building. You really own this. Yes. It's remarkable what you've built. Thank you. Marcus. Yeah. Can I tell people about your company now? Or is it still classified? I smiled. The company itself isn't classified. You can tell anyone you want. Good. Because I'm pretty sure half the executives from last night want to work with you, and I'd like to brag about my son for once. Feel free. He hugged me then. Tightly. The first real hug in probably a decade. 3 months later, Dad attended Archon's annual partners dinner. I introduced him to my team, my business partners, the government liaisons I could acknowledge publicly. He asked questions, listened carefully, and at one point whispered to me, I had no idea this is what you were building. How you know? I'm sorry it took so long. It's okay, Dad. We got here eventually. Victoria started asking about my work too. Real questions, not just polite interest. Mom visited my office and met my team. Slowly, carefully, my family started seeing me as I actually was, not as they'd assumed I'd be. And Dad? He updated how he introduced me. Now this is my son Marcus. He founded and runs a defense aerospace company. He's doing classified work I barely understand, but it's extraordinary. Want to hear about it? I still own West Shore Country Club. Dad still plays golf there every Saturday. But now when he signs the restaurant check or books the conference room, he smiles and says, "My son owns this place, you know." Last week we had coffee again in the owner's private dining room. Dad asked about a new contract we just won, $73 million for satellite defense integration. I explained what I could. He listened carefully, asked good questions, and at the end said, "I'm proud of you, Marcus. Not because of the money or the success. Because you never let my blindness stop you from building something meaningful. Thanks, Dad. And thank you for not giving up on me after I gave up on you. You're my father. I wasn't going to give up." He smiled. "Even after I uninvited you from my own retirement party? Even then." We finished our coffee in the club I own, surrounded by the success I built, finally understanding each other after 10 years of missing the point. Sometimes the best reversals aren't about humiliation or revenge. Sometimes they're about finally being seen for who you actually are. And sometimes that's enough.